Palm Sunday begins what you and I now know as Holy Week, a week that remembers the events of the last week of Jesus' earthly life, before Jesus was crucified, died, and was buried. On Palm Sunday, Jesus entered the holy city, Jerusalem. As he rode through the city streets, his followers shouted to him. They placed palm fronds, palm leaves, on his path. He rode upon a donkey, an animal that symbolizes peace. Roger Griffith writes a different approach about Palm Sunday. He puts it like this. On Palm Sunday, Jesus entered Jerusalem riding on a blazing white stallion. The stallion was kicking up a cloud of dust as he rode along. Jesus was looking for trouble. The people he passed on his way were awestruck in the beauty of such an animal. They were even more awestruck by the man who was riding upon it. As Jesus passed by, you could hear the people say, "Who was that masked man?" They were bad guys on the loose, and Jesus knew he had a job to do. As he rode into Jerusalem, he quickly sized up the situation and formed a plan to capture the ringleader of the troublemakers. His name was Diablo. A short scuffle, and Jesus won handily over Diablo. He hogtied the devil, threw him into jail. As a large crowd of people gathered to see what the commotion was all about, Jesus mounted his white horse once again, pulled on the reins. The white stallion stood on its hind legs, neighed loudly, pawed the air with his front legs. When the stallion had stood as tall as he could, Jesus leaned forward in the saddle, holding the reins with one hand while lifting his white hat in the air. Jesus shouted out with a loud voice. As Jesus turned and rode off into the sunset, you could hear the William Tell Overture playing in the background. Now, isn't that something how you would have entered Jerusalem on Palm Sunday? Something more dramatic, something more demonstrative. Jesus entered Jerusalem on Palm Sunday riding upon a donkey. He did the opposite. He was not a conquering hero. Leslie Weatherhead writes, "One almost catches one's breath in wonder at all the risks God took. It seemed as though the salvation of the world depended upon the faltering footsteps of a donkey. Jesus, his mother Mary, rode upon a donkey. On Palm Sunday, Jesus rode upon a donkey." Palm Sunday should have been the happiest day in Jesus' life. Crowds had been following Jesus. In the Gospel of John, the Pharisees murmured, "Look, the whole world has gone after Jesus." It seemed that way when Palm Sunday began, didn't it? It looked as though Jesus' preaching ministry was being crowned with great success and excitement. Jesus knew better. He knew how fickle the crowds could be. He knew that when push came to shove, Jesus could not really count on the people. When the chips were down and the cross went up, all would forsake Jesus. They would run away. The same people who on Palm Sunday had waved Jesus into Jerusalem, on Good Friday waved Jesus out of Jerusalem. Jesus, who rode into town in triumph, was carried out of town on a cross. How quick the crowds changed their shout of Hosanna on Palm Sunday to a shout of "Crucify him" on Good Friday. The reason why? Jesus did not fit their notion of what a respectable Messiah should look like or should act like. Before the week was out, Jesus had been arrested, tried, whipped, humiliated, spat upon, cursed at, plotted against, crucified, dead, and buried. When Jesus was born, there was no room for him in the inn. When Jesus died, there was no room for Jesus in the whole world. Jesus committed the unpardonable sin of not being the kind of Messiah everybody was looking for, everybody was expecting. We are a blessed people because we know the rest of the story. Palm Sunday and all those tragic events of Holy Week are changed in the glorious resurrection on Easter Sunday.